Why is Amazon killing the American dream as we speak? Yes, that company that some people love because you can just order something real quick on their app, or the people that hate because they think they're killing all the small shops. Where today we're going to talk about why Amazon is killing the American dream and what's going to happen to the future of the real estate. So let's just go right in.
The high cost of buying a home right now, the average rate on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage is nearly 7.5%. That's up nearly 2 percentage points from this time last year.
I recently came across this article that it says Jeff Bezos-backed real estate company launches a new fund to acquire more single-family homes in the United States. So you, as a first-time home buyer, cannot compete with that. That is just insane. Arrived is the name of the company, a very young company backed by Jeff Bezos, and Amazon recently announced that Jeff has decided to invest money into this new venture. The platform allows these investors to start investing with as little as $100 per investment. And I'm not talking a house, it's a pool of money where people are putting all their money, and then Jeff Bezos is going and buying real estate, kind of like what these other big, companies have been doing, like Blackstone and all of them. They've been buying a lot of real estate, and that is actually what is killing a little bit of the American dream, because the average buyer cannot compete with these mega corporations that have very deep pockets. To this date, this new platform has funded about 400 homes, the purchase of 400 homes, with a total value of $124 million. The concept of this idea company is that people should be able to invest in real estate without having to wait for single family homes to come on the market and buy the entire property. They're just buying little pieces of this. So this is why this is going to be quite a big challenge for many American families that are thinking about going into buying a house. Now, remember, at some point, Barbara Corcoran came and said that you should be buying real estate right now because prices are going to go through the roof.
Well, it's the only tool the federal government has for controlling inflation and getting a hold of our economy, and they've wanted to slow it down. And it's worked. A year ago, it was 9%. That was our inflation rate. Now it's down to 3%, and they're going to hold firm until it gets to exactly where the target is.
In the third quarter of 2023, this company earned approximately $890,000 in dividend income. Over the past years, this company has distributed $2.8 million in dividends to these small investors. So it is a good way to build wealth, but it's also a bad way to kill the American dream for so many families. So now let's talk about the first-time home buyers. They are an important part of the real estate equation. So here's why first home buyers, the challenges that some of the first-time home buyers are going to have to navigate. Number one is, according to Zillow, back in 2020, when things were very affordable for buyers and for sellers, we were more like a buyer's market back then than what it is in today's market. In 2024, a family only needed to make on an individual between $75,000 and $85,000 in income in order to afford a house. That, keep in mind that 1/3 of that income it's allocated to the purchase of a house, and the other 2/3 for the rest of the cost of living and so on. But in this article from Redfin, a home buyer must earn a minimum of $115,000 in order to purchase a house in this kind of environment. In some areas, like here in Montgomery County, I would probably say you need more like $125,000 to $135,000 because of the cost of living. So that alone means buyers need $40,000 more in order to afford the purchase of a house in today's market. So in addition to all these income requirements, now we have to talk about the interest rates. Buyers are facing probably some of the big jumps in interest rates. Thank God the Federal Reserve decided to stop those interest rates, but here is the thing. The moment they decide the interest rates need to go down, which they have already said many times, Jerome Powell already said it, that maybe by the third and fourth quarter, because it's an election year, maybe interest rates are going to come down, which is going to make it even more complicated for buyers. So buyers have now to navigate very discouraged homeowners that have low interest rate mortgages on their properties, and they don't want to sell because they feel very comfortable. They have these big corporations like Amazon and these other ones buying real estate for corporate purposes so they can fund these things. And keep in mind, cheaper money means that these corporations are going to go and borrow gazillions of millions of dollars to start putting into the real estate market to buy more houses. So the inventory continues to reduce for many of the buyers out there. In addition to that, the cost of living has gone up tremendously in so many of the areas. Now, a home buyer, it may be very discouraged to buy a house that needs a lot of work because that means time, energy, and money. So they are probably going to be more inclined to buy a house that is in move-in condition, ready condition, but there's really not a lot of those houses out there. And if you want to go and try to work with a builder right now, well, builders are in high demand because they are the only ones that are producing the inventory that is necessary for these home buyers to go ahead and find the houses they want. So overall, we're having the pressure from the big corporations buying, first-time home buyers being affected with all these things. And we're going to talk about this last point that you will probably have to watch, keep an eye very closely because we don't know what's going to happen. But also builders, as I said, they're the ones with the inventory, but they're all a little skeptical that they can overbuilt for their own purposes, and then they're not able to sell these houses, especially when back in 2023 interest rate continued to go up. They have to slam the brakes a little bit in order to just be cautious on how they're going to be operating when it comes to the construction of new homes. And remember, all the materials, the lumber, everything that is needed, the concrete, and even labor now, it is super expensive to build these houses. So for example, a house here in Montgomery County that back in 2020 was built, a single family home was built and probably for sale in the mid 500s, now is probably costing you in the high 600s, if not low 700s. So you see, that's a huge increase. And let's be honest, the salaries of any of us has gone up that increasingly high. If you are a homeowner, great for you because you have a lot of equity. But if you didn't buy a house before 2020, then you probably gonna have to rethink your strategy, maybe relocating to another area where houses are more affordable. So for example, a lot of people have decided to move to more affordable states like will be Florida or maybe Texas, or maybe going to parts of California, although it's not that as affordable. Arizona, it's a little more affordable. So that's where a lot of people have decided to migrate in order to buy more affordable housing and hopefully keeping a job that allows them to work remotely. So here are the three things that you need to keep an eye on. Number one, it's the interest rates. Number two is the jobs market. And the last thing will be the foreclosures and repos when it comes to vehicles. Why am I saying all this? Because those are very big indicators of what's going to happen to the economy. A lot of people have been predicting that a real estate crash is going to happen at some point, and nobody knows. I can tell you, back from 2008 to compared to today's market, the chances of having a big real estate crash are very small. Why am I saying that? Because back then, the type of loans people were getting were with minimum down payment, no income verification, no docs verification. So whatever happened back then, it was so easy to obtain a loan and buy a house. If you say we're making $60,000, they'll believe you and they'll give you a loan. Nowadays it's very different with the Dodd-Frank and all those new regulations. But if given that interest rates, right, are decided to go down, that is going to actually be really bad news for a lot of buyers, because the moment interest rates come down, prices go up because it's so cheap, it's so affordable to do those things. Now, inflation, the government has to play with inflation, so we don't know where that's going to land. If inflation continues to be stubborn and doesn't go down as they have been predicting, so maybe they will have to slow down the decrease of the interest rates. But if inflation comes where they want it to be, which is close to 2%, then they're going to have to reduce interest rates. And we are in an election year, so many things can happen, right? So the very next thing will be the job market. We continue to be in a very, very healthy job market. As a matter of fact, I think we haven't seen this kind of job market in many, many years. So according to the New York Times, in the month of January, 353,000 jobs were generated in the United States alone. So definitely there's a lot of demand, and as long as the job market continues to be healthy, corporations are going to continue to spend, they're going to continue to improve their systems, they're going to continue to grow, open other plants, other locations. So that means there's going to be good. So that's going to continue to make this engine move, which is what we want. Reality will be that if we would have an increase in the people applying for unemployment because there are not enough jobs out there, that will make everybody nervous and the market will have to cool down a little bit, and that could potentially bring the housing market to a stop, to some kind of a recession, if you want to put it those words. Do we need that? Maybe in some areas. Is it healthy for the entire government? Probably it's not healthy, but we have to keep an eye on that. And the very last thing will be the vehicle and foreclosure repossessions, right? Housing repos. So those things are stuff that we don't know what's going to happen with them. So we're going to have to keep an eye on people that have leased vehicles that maybe they are now cannot afford to pay for those leases or purchase of straight vehicles, and they can no longer afford those things. We have to keep an eye on them. Also, the people that have houses with mortgages that bought in the last 2 years at higher interest rates. If the interest rates come down, then maybe that is going to be something that you guys can consider to refinance. But for some people, maybe a solution is to renting a room or renting the basement of a house. Makes some financial sense in this point. You got to keep an eye on regulations because they are also coming down. A lot of the local governments are coming down with subletting and all those things that people are just concerned. So consult your local real estate agent if there are any regulations about that when it comes to the house market. So after all those things that I talked today, I hope that you found a lot of these value in these things. Remember, this is just for you to keep an eye on it, this to be informed. This is not about sales pressure, just education. So if you see some value in these kind of videos, please do me a favor and give it a like over there. And if you think you want to hear more about these things, subscribe. I'm Robert Garcia here, your local real estate agent in the Maryland, DC, Virginia. And remember, again, this is not about sales pressure, just education. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.